Washington has the nation's number one offense, according to Bill Barnwell. And we here on Locked On Huskies, I think we agree with that. Let's talk about it here on Locked On Huskies.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Huskies. I'm Rome Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. We write for Inside the Huskies of Fan Nation and Sports Illustrated. You can check out all our work over there at si.com/college/Washington. Today, Lars, we're going to be talking about Bill Barnwell's comments over on ESPN, where one of his 10 overreactions to week one was Washington has the best offense in the nation. And maybe it's not that much of an overreaction. But before we get into any of that, we got to remind everybody that today's episode is brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege or enter promo code LockedOnCollege for a free water bottle with any purchase. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you. Well, I mean, it's the question is that all of our YouTube listeners can see it right here on the graphic. Is this the nation's top offense, Lars?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look after week one and also combine that with the body of work that Washington and this exact same offense essentially built last season, it's hard to argue against it. I mean, Michael Penix returning a quarterback in a 5-touchdown game, 450 yards, plenty of receivers three different receivers caught a touchdown plus the tight end. I mean, everything is working. I think the only thing that is going to be a question mark that is going to be what is the run game going to provide. Dylan Johnson did get his first rushing touchdown, a 1-yarder, basically kind of a gimme at the goal line. But it certainly wasn't as convincing from a run game perspective that Washington's offense as a collective may be best, because I think there's no question it's the top passing offense in the country. The question is what about the run game? Because we know when we get into the meat of the season, it's going to be, well, yeah, they're going to find better teams than Boise State and this weekend against Tulsa. Better teams are going to find ways to stop or at least slow down this Washington offense in comparison to those two schools. So the running game has to find a way to make an impact some way, shape, or form as the season goes along.
No, absolutely. And I know we'll get more into that in the next segment. As we stay here, just kind of breaking down everything that we can look at with this nation's top offense. I want to give a quick shout out to my buddy Connor Adams, who is the official statistician for the radio broadcast this year. And he put out a great tweet the other day saying, and it's something that you and I were talking about in the press box, this is the first time in school history that Washington has had 3 receivers go over 95 receiving yards in the same game. So they were real close to that 100-yard mark for all 3 of them. But as Michael Penix said, Jalen McMillan just didn't want it enough, which great tweet that you put out there as well with that little video. But yeah, no, seriously, this passing offense is fantastic. And something you said to me right before we pressed record here is, especially with the way that Ohio State laid an egg the other day, that, yeah, I agree that this is the nation's top offense. And a big part of that is the offensive line. And we are recording this on Monday. We just got back from Kalen DeBoer's press conference where co-defensive coordinator William Inge and offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb also spoke. And one thing that Grubb told us was that he thought that both Nate Caleppo and Julius Buelow did a really solid job at left guard. We talked a lot about Parker Brailsford on yesterday's show and how excellent he was at right guard. I also had a little piece about that over on Inside the Huskies, so check that out over there, where the offensive line was solid. And the other guy that Ryan Grubb shouted out, because we've talked a lot about Trey Fautanu and Roger Rosengarten here on this program, is Mateo Mele. And he said that Mateo Mele was one of their top grades that they handed out, was that they were really impressed with everything it was that he did. And I mean, that makes 5 right there. That's solid from left to right. And when we just look at, we'll talk, as I said, we'll talk more about what they're going to do in the run game, what they can do to improve there. But what Ryan Grubb said was that a lot of the struggles in the run game were self-inflicted. So I don't even know if that's something that we're necessarily going to be concerned about moving forward as people who cover this team. But it's something where we watched what Michael Penix and the rest of the passing game were able to do on Saturday in spite of not being able to run the ball very effectively. And I don't think that there's anything to be concerned about with this team, at least when it comes to throwing the football.
No, and I mean, PFF had him graded as the number 1 offensive line pass blocking team in the first week of the game, in the first week of the season over Georgia. So that's where we're talking about where this Washington offensive line is. They had a 95 grade.
That's impressive.
And that was clear and above, especially in the Pac-12, the best offensive line. But again, it is Boise State, and it is week 1. But again, we kind of saw it towards last season where Roger Rosengarten had a pretty good start to the season. Then he had a little bit of a dip, but you could see that early body of work was going to be more or less what was going to carry him through the rest of the season, and it did, because he was one of the best tackles in the country and one of the best returning right tackles in the country for sure. And the fact that they're starting off so well this season, even though, which is kind of crazy that they gave up a sack on the first drive of the game, but then they didn't give up another sack the rest of the day.
I don't think that there was much pressure after that first sack of the game.
I think after the second drive, certainly there was definitely less pressure, and I mean both Grubb and DeBoer hit on it. That all those touchdown passes, Mike put it right in the spot to Polk and all those other passes, but he doesn't do that without the offensive line, because we saw the first 2 drives, the offense didn't do much.
No, you're absolutely right. And also, real quick, I do want to shout out Boise State, because all due respect, they are worlds better than Tennessee Martin, who Georgia played. So, just want to give just even more props to Washington's offensive line in that category. But yeah, no, it's I just feel like that there aren't enough good things to say about this offense, which is why we decided to just dedicate this entire show to that side of the ball, because it deserves to be talked about. Michael Penix is getting all the attention in the world, rightfully so. We'll talk more about, the Heisman, where he might stand after some other strong performances that we saw from across college football this week later on in the show. But yeah, it's there. I think that it's very clear that this is the nation's top offense, because if they can learn to run the ball effectively, and again, we will go more in depth on that, but they have the offensive line to do it, and they have the personnel and the passing game to do it too, to stretch defenses out, to make them thin, to say, all right, yeah, that's a 6-man box, and we can put 7 guys down there and block, and we can win that battle every time. So
yeah,
please go ahead. No.
What I was going to say, the other thing to consider, we'll talk more about it, but Dylan Johnson also had 3 pass catches. And so now, granted, the ironic part, when you look at his numbers, there's 3 for 20 yards with a long of 20 yards. So the average works out great there, but that means you also had 2 catches where you did absolutely nothing. But I think that also, again, it's a small sample size, not necessarily a great sample size, but I do think that's also something to remember moving forward in the season, where regardless of what happens in the other department we're going to talk about in the next segment, they do have the ability with him and Will Nixon to get them the ball in space in other ways. And I think that might be the answer for that problem more so than anything else.
No, I agree. And I think that Will Nixon just showed the most burst out of any running back on Saturday. And just kind of this added bonus, one thing that Grubb talked about was that Sam Adams is in the mix a little bit. We saw him get a couple snaps on Saturday, and it's something we've talked about before on this program. Like I said earlier, I know I repeat a lot of these points, but that's just kind of what it is all of these guys are threats to catch the ball as well. So they're so just talented in every area of the field. It's not like, oh yeah, this is our guy who we go to like for pass pro, or this is the guy we go to when it's 1st and 10, or oh, this is our goal line back right here. Everybody can do a little bit of everything, which I feel like is hard to come by, and something that just really helps out this offense.
The ironic part is almost like when you look at quarterbacks, when you have 2, you have none. How many running backs do they have? What, 3, 4? How many? If you have 4 running backs, you have 1, maybe 2.
Maybe.
And I think, but I think that's kind of the unique thing with this offense. And again, we all got to remember Ryan Grubb is a running back / wide receiver at heart, so he's always going to find ways, and that's kind of his brain trust, is getting guys the ball in space. I think that's just, no matter how he does it, he finds a way, and it's just because he knows the scheme so well.
That's absolutely right. And you know what, like, just speaking of things that, are just so that so well, you fit so well, I want to talk about Birddogs, because man, I truly do love wearing my Birddogs when, I wear them to practice. I wore them at the game on Saturday because it was hot and they were comfortable. They're easy to wear. I wore my joggers to the state fair yesterday. Birddogs, they make you look good. Their stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and the leg to help give you a truly sculpted look. I can't talk this morning. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of stiff, restricting cotton, and they really do just feel more comfortable for me, as somebody with bigger thighs, once I put my Birddogs on, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm super comfortable. And one of the best things about them is they use anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keep you cool and dry all day long. Birddogs are functional for any occasion: golf, a date, an evening out, a pool, a workout, lounging around, doing some work. Anytime, really, Birddogs are great for it. And, I think you should go get some for yourself. You can go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege or enter promo code lockedoncollege at checkout for a free Birddogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. We promise you. And, running around in shorts is always great. The running game, we touched on it a little bit just now, but let's go a little bit more in depth here and talk about the running game. And is there anything that you're concerned about in the world of running the football with this offense?
Not particularly, because I think going back to the body of work thing, Dylan Johnson had 2 or 3 years of body work at Mississippi State. So I think I'm not necessarily concerned about his lack of production in week 1. Again, he did get in the end zone. It was kind of a gimme touchdown. But actually, to that same point, he did kind of drop that Boise State defender to get over the line. He kind of laid that shoulder
strong, man.
Which, again, it's at the goal line. You're naturally going to be doing that anyways. But I think it was like point of contact, stood him up at the line. He's like, no. One more hit. You're going over the line. I need to score. And I think he's got that, no pun intended here, dog mentality, where it's like, couldn't help myself. But no, he has the mentality to where you can trust him, to handle the rock in key situations. I think it was almost kind of just happenstance, and let's be honest, they didn't need to run the ball that well to beat Boise State. But again, this is more or less like, I know it's much like the players. You got to live in the moment. You got to focus on this week and going into next week. But it really matters more for those certain situations and those scenarios to play out later. When you're playing Oregon, when you're playing USC, Utah, teams that are actually going to stop you in the passing game, and honestly probably on the run game. And that's where things might get a little more dicey. But I think going back to what we were saying earlier, I think you have enough bodies, even if you throw in just Will Nixon and Daniel Ngata. I think those 3 are enough to get you to where you want to be as an offense at the end of the day.
And we didn't really see Ngata on the field on Saturday either. He was just kind of there in like very small spurts. But one thing that I did kind of want to touch on is, and I wanted to ask you this question because I have my answer, but I really want to hear what you have to say about this, is if Will Nixon, and we know what play we're talking about, if you go back and watch the film, and he talked about it after the game on Saturday, the play where he could have cut back and scored a 50-yard touchdown. Those are his words. Should have cut back and scored a touchdown. If he does that, are we still saying, "Oh, I'm worried about the run game here"?
Not necessarily, but also I don't think, because it's not just Will. First of all, let's run with the premise that Will Nixon is your number 1 back. Are we satisfied with that? I'm not necessarily satisfied with that. But that's not a slight to Will. No, but it's kind of like he's able to excel in those 8 to 12 to 15 plays a game because you're keeping him in that mark. You're not asking him, hey, you're now going to take the first 3 carries and you're now going to be the bell cow and you're now going to be the guy that's got to touch it 25 times a game, 15 run, 10 pass, that sort of thing. That's where, even though he's added that weight on this offseason, I still think it's a little more concerning that you're having that ability. But I think, he's got Will. I think Will is still capable enough to where he's going to make a significant impact. But I think if he's your 1, I mean, I think we really can't undersell the loss of Cam Davis, because Cam ended up being able to do everything at the end of the day. He was probably your best run blocker. He was arguably one of your best pass catchers next to Dylan Johnson. And he had that experience to where he could get you the yardage when you absolutely needed it. Will is gaining that experience. Dylan has that, but doesn't have the production necessarily. And I think, honestly, because he was not limited in fall camp, but they weren't exactly trying to rush him back, I think he's not in a game shape yet. My personal opinion. I think, by the Michigan State game, he's going to be running on all cylinders. It's kind of like you're getting a running start into the season. So I don't think it's the worst plan, given who you're facing the first 2 or 3 games of the season.
No, that is a good point. And I wanted to just kind of circle back and touch on your original point of just Will Nixon and how many touches a game should he get. I've been talking a lot about the Cowboys today with a friend. So and this is something I barely ever do, but he kind of feels like he would thrive most in the Tony Pollard role, where it's, yeah, he's the change of pace kind of back, where it's, oh yeah, he's out there for 8, 10, 12, 15 snaps, whatever it is. And because he showed that burst. And that was the one thing that I know I tweeted during the game was, oh yeah, he's got this really impressive burst whenever he is out there. And he was the one who's picking up those 15, 20-yard chunk plays on the ground. But is that really going to be the same thing that you see if we were to, as you said, if we were to see him get 20, 25 touches over the course of a game? Probably not. But there's not, and even Dylan Johnson, who I think is very, very talented, I don't think that he should get 20, 25 touches a game. I think that there's no running back in the room. And even if Cam Davis was in this mix, I don't think that he would have gotten that same kind of workload. That 15 seems like the max that one back in this room should get over the course of the game. And it's great because you can rotate them out on such a regular basis that it's not really, it wouldn't really be that big of an issue on a week in, week out basis. And really quickly, I have to remind everybody that college football season is here. And this season, Locked On is kicking up our coverage with Locked On College Football Kickoff Live. Each Friday, Locked On will go live from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On College YouTube channel, so you can find it right here on Locked On Huskies. College Football Kickoff Live will cover playoff implications, the conference rivalry games, and go in depth like only Locked On can, including insight and analysis from our stable of Locked On College hosts covering their team every day. Find Locked On College Football Kickoff Live every Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on any Locked On College YouTube channel. You won't want to miss it. Ooh, that was a lot of talking.
I feel that.
And then I feel like the last thing, and yes, we covered it in the previous segment, but the last thing that we can say about this and say that really that there's no reason to be concerned about the running game yet is because this offensive line is so talented. We just talked about it, but I really don't think that there's any reason to worry when we look at this offensive line just from left to right. It's, yeah, if you're going to ask those dudes to go downhill 35 times a game, they're going to have fun doing it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that, I almost wonder, I think that, not to kind of go back to the last segment, but I do think as the season progresses, whoever wins that left guard spot is probably going to be the better run blocker. And I think we know who that was on Saturday. We get to see again who gets the most snaps on Saturday. But I think, to your point, once those positions get a little more solidified and the running back position itself gets a little more solidified and kind of who they're going to rely on and how much does Dylan Johnson get? Is it Daniel Ngata? Is it Will Nixon? I'm curious how much run Sam Adams will continue to get. I think he's a ways off as a pass blocker, so that's probably where his gap is maybe a little wider than the rest of those three. But we also got to remember, Tyrell Rogers still can be a factor this year. And I think, I saw him make that pirouette catch on the sideline pregame, and I'm like, okay, if this guy can just figure it out and get it together, which he sounds like for the most part has, they could also really have something there as well. So I think this room is still to be determined, but there's certainly no cause for concern at this point in the season.
No, I really couldn't have said it any better. And I don't know if Tybo burns his red shirt at this point, unless it's something where he just blows away the coaches and it's just, we can't keep this guy off the field. And
somebody else has to get hurt.
Yeah, and even if somebody else gets hurt, they're still like we talked about. We didn't see a lot of Daniel Ngata, where he's still there. We didn't really see much Richard Newton either, where he's somebody else who's still there.
I'm not sure we're going to see Rich much. It just seems like, because think about it, this is really his last year. It's kind of like if there ever was a guy almost to be that offset back, that guy that late in games, the Dylan Morris, if you will, like how he's able to get his throws. It won't be every game that he gets his throws, but it's like, hey, we got a 25-point lead here. Let's just give Newton some carries. Probably means he's just at some level not able to for whatever reason. Maybe that's a health thing because and going back to what Grubb told me that I brought up about a week and a half ago, where these injury history guys, they're even more cautious with them and they're less likely to get a chance because of that. Sam Adams and Richard Newton both fall into that category. At the moment, Sam Adams is actually healthy for once. Richard Newton just, for whatever reason, isn't there yet.
You're right, and I was going to try to find a way to work the word bet in there, but I just couldn't, so I'm just going to go right into it.
It's a smart bet. Richard Newton won't play a lot this year.
I didn't want to go that route, but it's time to talk about FanDuel. because it's time to get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get 200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can be on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/locked on and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And it's time to get into just really, I think this is just going to be a really fun thing to discuss because there was so much great quarterback play that we watched. And I know that I've been somebody on Twitter who has just run down Colorado at every chance that he's gotten. And I was impressed by what I saw from Shedeur Sanders. Caleb Williams is Caleb Williams. And there was just a lot of really good quarterback play on Saturday from week one. Yeah, we've seen 2 games from Caleb so far. But where do you think that, Michael Penix ranks among these quarterbacks? I saw one account that was getting a lot of retweets, and I don't retweet any of these ones that are very clearly for engagement. I'll throw out the initials BGB. It wasn't that one, but there are a lot like that who just throw out whatever for engagement, where somebody ranked Michael Penix as the 7th best quarterback that they saw on Saturday. And I almost threw my phone across the room because that was just horrible. That's just terrible.
I mean, all that tells me is the person just didn't watch as much of the UW Boise State game as they did, UNC or whatever, or Colorado TCU, whatever. They watch more of those games so they have a greater sense of them than they do.
All due respect, KJ Jefferson was at number 6. All due respect to KJ Jefferson. They just don't know ball.
Okay. Wait. Had I known that going into the previous answer, I was like, okay, yeah, never mind. But yeah, no. But I mean, I think to answer this question here, I think we all know Penix is going to end up being one of the top 4 quarterbacks in the country. Do 3 or 4 quarterbacks get invited to New York? Probably. I would say 3 certainly will. 4 might, depending on how the voting goes. But I mean, if you go off of PFF stats, now Caleb Williams and Michael Penix are 1A, 1B, but except they're at 13 and 14, and somehow Drake May and Shedeur Sanders are above them. Shedeur, you know what? Give him his props. Give him his credit. I thought Colorado going this year would be 6 and 6, and I'm probably alone in that boat because most people see them going like 2 or 10 or 3 or 9.
I was going to be nice and say 4 and 8. So
see, I think that they can get to that 5 and 6. They probably won't get to 7 or 8, but I thought again, for various reasons, I don't necessarily think Shedeur Sanders is the best quarterback in the country. I don't think anybody would say that aside from Deion, which fair, absolutely. I would be surprised if he didn't say that. Honestly. But again, I would be surprised. I would actually be more surprised if Deion didn't say that. But having said that, I think over the course of the season, I think there's gonna be more of a book on Shedeur, and they're gonna find ways to ground him. But I think he's still talented. Sure. But there's a gap between Shedeur, Drake May, and then Caleb Williams and Michael Penix. And yes. I think there's just too much. The Florida State quarterback didn't get to watch him. I'm just gonna say that honestly. So I know Jordan Travis. You're right. So I think he might be that 5th or 6th quarterback. Kind of there's in that list. But I think
there's one name you've left off this list, and I think because it's Locked On Huskies, I love that you did that.
Oh, I mean, I don't consider him a Heisman contender. I think he's a very fine. He's a poor version of Johnny Manziel, if you will. A better he's a great gamer, right? He's a great gamer, and he's a great quarterback, right? But I mean, there's a difference between can he replicate that at the NFL level, and what does that signify? Jake Browning was a great college quarterback, but there's a difference between what can you do in college and what are your pro prospects. The throw that Michael Penix had to Jalen Polk on a dime in the breadbasket from one hash to the other across half the field. Bo Nix is not making that. Bo Nix is not making that pass. I am sorry. I know, but he does have the ability to take deep shots, right? And we saw it against Washington last year. Bo is probably 6 or 7, and maybe he could play in the top 5 just because he's going to have the stats to prove it and things like that. But I think again, there's just a gap. There's honestly a gap between Caleb Williams and Michael Penix. It's not massive, and it's certainly not as massive as the one between Bo and Penix. Caleb's
legs are the whole reason that there's that gap there.
That's exactly that is literally the gap right there.
Also, I have to say, Lars, that was a pretty bodacious take from you.
I mean, why not? But again, it's not a slight. Like there's a difference between like Myles Gaskin never won the Doak Walker Award, but he was one of the more consistent running backs, top 5 in the country every single year when he was at Washington.
Oh no, absolutely.
So Bo top 5 every year, sure. Great. But that doesn't mean that there's not a golden ticket here that says, "Hey, come with it."
Some of the colors of their jerseys might want to beg to differ on that point. But no, I'm not touching that. There's one thing that I really do want to dive into here, and it's stupid. I hate having to discuss this, but it's something we have to discuss, and it's the media attention. Because last year, it took until the Michigan State game for people to be like, oh, this Penix guy is good. And then there was hype after Stanford, and then the Huskies lost to UCLA, and they lost to Arizona State. And we didn't hear any hype about Michael Penix again until like the Oregon game. It's like the middle of November. So by that point, even though he was amazing all season, we know this. There was no hype, and there was no chance that anyone was going to pay attention to him because of that. So now, even like this year, let's say the Huskies drop a game or two, wherever you might see that on the schedule. I know saying 2 is just basically a death sentence, but
that's kind of thank you for reading that correctly. One is fine. One is acceptable. Sure, I have losing a game, but
sure. But all I'm saying is the point I'm really trying to make is the hype will still be there, because if Mike is still doing what he did last year when the Huskies lost a couple of games, still throwing for 350, 400 yards, multiple touchdowns, 3, 4, whatever it might be, he's still going to have that attention. And people, and it's stupid to say this, but all those accounts that are just tweeting, oh, the Huskies are going to lose to Boise State for engagement, are going to say, oh my God, look at what Michael Penix is doing. Look at all these look at this perfect throw. Look at this throw. And shout out to people in my comments on Twitter who were saying that throw to Jalen Polk was not quote unreal, like I said it was, because it absolutely was. And Ryan Grubb said as much today, but shout out to him. But no, it's the media hype and the media attention that this team did not have last year for a plethora of reasons. You can talk about the coming off the Jimmy Lake era. You can talk about just people not really knowing who Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb were, or not really knowing who Michael Penix was. You can talk about all those things as reasons that there was not that hype and that excitement, but that alone, and it's about making those social media throws every week. Shout out to Emmanuel Acho. And, we can give Justin Herbert 30 seconds, not 30 seconds. I'll give him 5 seconds of just name time on this podcast. But it's something where he's making those social media throws every week, where he's blowing up. Oh, wow. Look at this 50-yard dime that he threw on a rope. Oh, look at this great catch that Jalen McMillan made on a perfectly thrown ball. It's all of that. That's what's going to keep him in the conversation every week. And I think what will ultimately end up leading to him being in New York.
See, my thing is, I go back to your season prediction where you thought they would lose to Oregon, or is it
Oregon State?
Oregon State. Okay, so I was gonna say, because imagine if Penix loses to Oregon at home against Bo Nix. Bo's gonna jump him in the Heisman. Bo's gonna jump in the Heisman convention.
Oh, sure, yeah.
To your point of that media hype and everything.
Even like if Penix outplays him.
Exactly. So I think that's why those losses, Arizona State was the one that was unforgivable last year.
Yeah,
because he didn't throw a touchdown. Got a pick, didn't throw a touchdown. That was the season right there in the desert.
Yep.
And so the same case again. If they lose that sort of game like Oregon State this year, when you go down to Corvallis, that would almost be the death sentence again.
That we'll see, but this is where we disagree, because if that we saw them play very well yesterday, as we record this on Monday, but I forgot what day it was for a second. That was not good. But no, it's this whole thing of, if that team lives up to the 9-10 win potential that it has, I don't think it's an issue. And it's because they have a really talented defense. We saw that defense last year, and a lot of those guys are back, and it's still very well coached. But that's something where if people start to just say, oh, Oregon State is this riser, and I'm going to stick with that season prediction because, it's set in stone. It's on this podcast. It's in writing. It's set in stone now. But if we're playing out the season where that's the one loss that this Husky team takes, and it's, Michael Penix because no matter what happens in the game, it's Michael Penix lost to Oregon State. That's the narrative that comes out of that. It's, oh, even though he threw 400 yards and 4 touchdowns against a really good defense, because, that's what this guy does against the best teams in the country. I don't think it matters if that's the one blip on the radar. If that's a second blip, sure. Like you insinuated with your face earlier for all our YouTube viewers and everyone on Apple, Spotify, we love you too. But I don't think it's a death sentence if that's the one blemish on the schedule.
Yeah, if it's the one, no. But if it's in that scenario, it's like, okay, so they lose to Oregon State, but then beat Oregon and USC. Like, that would just be crazy. Like, and
Utah.
Yeah, but but if you get through Oregon and USC, it's almost like, man, like,
you got to do it. But I feel like with that just being a hostile environment, everything that it is, because it is a more hostile environment than USC. Let's just call a spade a spade.
Where's not mine?
Hey, I grew up in Los Angeles. I know what it looks like. But yeah, no, it's that kind of is what it is here. I know we kind of have to wrap up here. Lars, as always, I want to thank you for being here with me today. We always have a lot of fun here on Locked On Huskies. And thank you to everyone else out there who's here following along this journey with us. We really appreciate you. I saw we just hit 300 subscribers on YouTube. We really appreciate it. Please continue to bump those numbers up. Like, comment. If there's anything you want to see on this show, leave it in the comments or tweet it at us at Tomashoff34, at Lars Hanson, or at Locked On Huskies. Feel free to give our Twitter a follow as well. We do read those, and we do want to hear what you have to say, because it does matter, and we want to make sure that this show is the best for all of you out there every single day. So leave us a 5-star review. Whatever it is that you want to do to get in touch with us, please do that. Ask us questions. Give us suggestions. Shoot things out for the mailbag. It's all there. Just make sure that you're subscribed so you can keep up to date with us every day. Check it out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. We're there. Thanks for listening. We'll see you tomorrow.